I got kicked out of my own family like I was disposable. Not because I stole, not because I lied, not because I failed. I got punished for succeeding without them. My golden sister couldn't stand the idea that I might shine on my own, so she lit the match. And my parents didn't even ask if the fire was real. 3 years later, she showed up at my door looking broken, whispering the words I never thought I'd hear: "I need you." Because the family restaurant, the empire they chose over me, is collapsing, and now they want the son they erased to save it. I'm Kincaid, and I'm about to tell you the whole truth. But before I do, can you say hi in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from? Sometimes knowing someone is there makes all the difference. And if you've ever been the other child in your own home, hit subscribe because you're not alone. And this story might be the lifeline you didn't know you needed. Thank you. Now, let me tell you everything. They say success changes people. But in my family, it didn't change me. It changed how they saw me. My name is Kincaid, for short, and this is the story of how I was erased by my own family the moment I dared to succeed on my own terms. Today, I'm 31 years old, working in Midtown Atlanta as a strategy consultant. I wear fitted suits, lead million-dollar client meetings, and walk into boardrooms where people actually listen when I speak. On the surface, I look like someone who figured it out, and in many ways I did. But underneath that polished version of me is a scar that's never quite healed, a scar shaped like a home I no longer belong to. The place I grew up in wasn't far from where I live now, but it felt like another planet. Alpharetta, suburban, safe Southern. At the center of our lives was the family business, Peachtree Smokehouse, a BBQ restaurant with just enough charm and local press to make my parents feel like royalty in their own little empire. My father, Gordon Hawthorne, ran it like a general. My mother, Marlene, played the role of Southern hostess, warm smile, sharp judgment. And then there was Brielle, my older sister, the golden child, the crown jewel of the Hawthorne legacy. If Brielle got an A, there was cake photos and a brag post on Facebook by sundown. If I got an A, I usually found myself doing the dishes that night because I had time. That was the tone of my childhood, not abusive, but precise in how love and pride were rationed. Brielle shined bright, loud, perfect. She was homecoming queen valedictorian, and later a business school darling who could charm a room with nothing but a smile. I was the kid who fixed the register when it froze, and stayed after hours to update the restaurant's website. Quiet. Useful. Background. I don't remember the exact moment I realized my family measured love in returns on investment, but I do remember the feeling. Like I was some side project they forgot they started. Peachtree Smokehouse wasn't just a business, it was a brand, a monument to their pride. And Brielle, she was the face of it. She did PR, hosted influencers, filmed sizzle reels for Instagram. I worked behind the curtain installing POS systems, fixing broken Wi-Fi, automating order tracking. I did it all without asking for recognition, maybe because I had already accepted I'd never get it. What stung wasn't that I wasn't the favorite. It was how blatant they made it. At family events, guests would always ask Brielle about her newest marketing campaign or how her business classes were going. No one asked me anything beyond, "Hey, you still doing that computer stuff?" Even when the systems I built helped streamline the restaurant's entire operation, the credit always landed on Brielle's desk. My parents said it was because she's the one people relate to, as if competence wasn't worth attention. Still, I kept my head down and worked. I believed, maybe foolishly, that if I just built a solid career, kept proving myself, one day I'd get to stand on equal footing. That someday they'd see me. That someday began with an idea, an MBA. I wanted to move into strategic operations consulting, or maybe even start my own firm. I'd done the research, found programs, and even mapped out how I could continue working while studying. I built a pitch because that's what it was, really a business case for my own education. All I needed was someone to co-sign a student loan to help with the initial cost. Nothing extravagant. Just someone to believe in me a little. They had once paid for Brielle's entire education, tuition, housing, even her semester abroad. I didn't want that. I just needed help getting through the door. But what I got was silence. Then a smirk. Then that line that still echoes in my head to this day. Brielle was an investment in the family. Your MBA. That's just for you. So I asked myself the same question you might be asking now. If they had no problem paying everything for her, why couldn't they just sign their names for me? And if that wasn't enough, what happened next will tell you exactly how disposable I really was to them. At the time all of this happened, I had already started climbing. I was working at a tech-forward consulting firm in Midtown Atlanta, known for fixing operational disasters. My specialty was coming into broken systems, logistics, customer service, digital, and making them work. I wasn't flashy, but I delivered. I had started getting recognition internally, small bonuses, a promotion on the horizon. And despite everything, I still tried to help the family business behind the scenes. I rebuilt the Peachtree Smokehouse website, integrated a new online ordering system, updated their social media integration so Brielle could post deals directly. I didn't ask for credit. Not once. But then things shifted. Anytime the restaurant saw a spike in delivery orders, my parents would say it was because of Brielle's branding strategy. When regulars mentioned how seamless the mobile site had become, my dad would say, "Yeah, Brielle's got an eye for modern stuff." I started to realize that I was allowed to help as long as no one outside the family knew I had. At first, Brielle acted like it didn't bother her. She'd thank me for the tech stuff in a way that sounded like she was humoring a kid with a toy. But soon her tone changed. She began prying how much money was I making now. What were my plans for the next 5 years? Was I planning to move away? Then came the moment that changed everything. I had been accepted into a top MBA program. I spent nights drafting a presentation for my parents detailing the tuition structure, projected career outcomes, networking potential, everything. It wasn't just a dream, it was a damn smart investment. I invited them to sit down after dinner one night at the restaurant's private office space. I laid everything out on the table. The costs, the plan, and the request a co-signed loan. Not money, just their name. My father leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. My mother looked away. And then came the words, quiet, but sharp enough to gut me. "We can't do that, Dash. We need to focus on the business. We already invested in Brielle's education. That was for the family. This is for you." I remember trying to respond, but my words felt like sandpaper in my throat. I wasn't even asking them to pay. I just didn't want to drown in debt. But they looked at me like I was selfish for wanting more than what I'd been handed. The next day, I overheard a phone call my dad had with a commercial lender. They were discussing expanding the restaurant, new location, new staff, new equipment. All of their savings, all of their resources were being poured into a second Peachtree Smokehouse. Suddenly, their refusal made perfect sense. It wasn't that they couldn't help me. It was that they wouldn't. They had chosen the business over their son. That realization hurt, but what came after stung deeper. One afternoon, I was searching through a stack of papers in the office looking for an old receipt I needed for tax season. That's when I saw it, a draft proposal between my parents and a potential franchise investor. On the 4th page, there it was in writing, Dashiell Kincaid will serve as Director of Digital Operations, overseeing system architecture, logistics automation, and back-end integration. My name. My role. My future planned without a single word to me. That's when I understood the full picture. They had already mapped out my part in their empire. I wasn't supposed to leave, grow, or build something of my own. I was just supposed to wait until they gave me a corner of what they built so I could hold it up for them quietly from behind the curtain. My MBA was a threat to that narrative. It meant I might choose something different, something mine. To them, that wasn't ambition. That was betrayal. And somewhere in that bitter mix of silence, control, and conditional love, a fuse had already been lit. What would Brielle do when she realized I wasn't going to be her shadow anymore? I was about to find out. There's a certain silence that follows rejection, the kind that hums in your ears and makes your own breath sound too loud. That's what I remember most from the night my parents refused to co-sign my MBA loan. Not the words, not the sting of the comparison to Brielle. Just that awful silence that said without saying, "This is the limit of what you're worth to us." I left Alpharetta that night with no plan, no backup, and no idea what to do next. But somewhere in the back of my mind, one name kept surfacing: Celeste. My father's older sister, Dr. Celeste Hawthorne, had always been something of a mystery in the family. A neurosurgeon with a sharp tongue and a sharper mind, she kept her distance from most family gatherings, never quite fitting into the mold of polite Southern deference that my parents valued. To me, she was the only adult who ever spoke to me like I was more than just background noise. Calling her felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. My father hated when Celeste interfered, which really just meant offering an opinion that didn't match his. But I didn't have the luxury of pride anymore. I called her the next morning. I didn't try to hide my voice cracking or how desperate I sounded. I told her everything: the loan rejection, the way they looked at me, the plan they had made for me without even asking. And then I asked the question that almost made me hang up before I could finish it. Would she help Celeste? Didn't even hesitate. She told me to meet her that evening in Buckhead at her apartment overlooking Peachtree Road. It was the kind of place that felt expensive without trying to impress you: quiet, filled with books, low lighting, and a kind of stillness that made me feel like I didn't have to keep my guard up. She poured me tea. No lecture. No "what took you so long?" Just warmth. "You're not asking me to fund your lifestyle, Dash," she said, voice firm. "You're asking for an investment in your future, and that's what I do. I invest in people who are building something. I promised her I'd repay it, that I'd sign whatever contract she needed, set up a payment plan, anything." Celeste waved me off. "If your father finds out, he'll throw a tantrum, not because you asked me, but because I said yes. He hates the idea of being outdone." I nodded. I already knew. That was why I asked for one more favor to keep it between us. If my father even sniffed that I'd found a way around him, he wouldn't just resent me, he'd erase me. We signed the loan paperwork quietly. Celeste even had a contact at the university's financial aid office to help expedite the process. For the first time in months, I felt like I was breathing again. But just when I thought the path ahead was finally clear, something shifted. Celeste pulled me aside before I left her apartment. "You trust your sister too much," she said flatly. "Brielle's the kind of person who needs control, especially over narratives. If she finds out about this, she won't confront you. She'll rewrite the story in a way that makes her the victim." I brushed it off. I wasn't careless. I had deleted emails after forwarding the loan approval notice to myself, never mentioned Celeste in texts, kept every conversation offline. But I'd been living between two worlds for so long I got comfortable. Too comfortable. And that's when the small cracks began to show. It started with my email inbox. A few messages were marked as read before I opened them. At first I thought I'd misclicked. Then I noticed a draft I didn't remember writing. One of my documents about financial aid had been renamed, moved to a different folder. I chalked it up to a glitch. Then came the browsing history, logins from an IP address in Alpharetta, and a calendar event I hadn't created reminding me to finalize university documents. My stomach turned. Someone had been in my laptop, possibly through remote access. And if that someone had access to files, they could have seen my loan approval, the name Celeste Hawthorne on the contract, even my essay drafts. I thought back to my time helping at the restaurant office. I had logged into Wi-Fi there. I had used a shared desktop to test email automation. I had left breadcrumbs. Brielle's questions started to sharpen. She asked where the tuition money came from, what bank I was using, whether I had a scholarship. I played dumb joked about loans and budgeting, but the way she looked at me, it wasn't curiosity. It was calculation. One night I caught her alone at the house, standing in the hallway with my laptop bag. She claimed she was moving it out of the way, but the look on her face said otherwise. And then came the words that made everything click into place. "Do you really think Celeste is going to choose you over me?" There was no context, no lead-in. She just dropped it like a brick through glass. My blood ran cold. My parents didn't say anything when I brought up the MBA again. My mother busied herself with dishes. My father adjusted the TV volume. But their silence spoke volumes. I had crossed a line they couldn't forgive, and Brielle had already told them which story to believe. And if they needed a reason to cut me loose, I had a feeling they were about to get one. The day started like any other. I closed a big client deal at work, had lunch with a senior partner, and got a congratulatory email from my MBA advisor confirming my orientation schedule. I was humming when I got in my car, thinking of how to finally tell my family the news. Despite everything, part of me still hoped they'd be proud, that they'd finally see me. But as I pulled into the driveway in Alpharetta, the air felt different. Heavy. Still. Inside the house was too clean. Too quiet. My father's truck was in the garage, my mother's purse sat untouched on the kitchen island, and yet no one greeted me. I walked to my room and immediately noticed something was off. My nightstand drawer was slightly open. The documents on my desk were rearranged. A few USBs were missing. And the laptop I kept stored in my bag was gone. I found it on the living room coffee table screen open. My chest tightened. On the screen was an email, addressed to Celeste. It was written in my voice, or rather a crude version of it. It talked about selling proprietary information from the restaurant in exchange for educational funding. It listed supplier names, spice blend ratios, wholesale meat vendors, even back-end revenue projections. It was dated 2 weeks prior and marked draft saved. I didn't write it, but it looked real. Too real. That was when my father walked in. "Don't say anything," he snapped before I could open my mouth. The evidence speaks for itself. My mother stood behind him, tears already in her eyes. But not the kind that mourn a son, the kind that grieve a betrayal. "You sold us out, Dash," she whispered. "For what? A diploma," I tried to explain. Tried to tell them someone must have hacked my account or planted the file. But my words bounced off a wall already built. They weren't listening. They didn't want truth. They wanted closure. A reason to erase me that sounded noble. Brielle gave them that. I turned to her. She stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, face blank. "You don't even believe this," I said. "You know I never had access to those numbers. You wrote them. You planted this." She didn't flinch, just tilted her head. "Funny how people get bold when they think someone finally chose them," she said. That's when I knew. This had been the plan all along. My father gestured toward the hallway. "Your things are packed. Don't come back. No trial, no questions. No space for me to defend myself. Just exile served cold and clean." As I walked out of that house, I saw boxes of my things lined up by the garage. My books, my clothes. Even the old photo of me and Brielle as kids, cracked frame and all shoved on top of a pile. And it hit me then. The worst part wasn't being betrayed. It was realizing they'd been waiting for a reason. And now they had one. The gravel crunched under my feet as I wheeled the last of my boxes to the curb. My hands were shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the adrenaline of humiliation. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew how it would be seen. If I raised my voice, I'd be proving them right. That I was unstable, untrustworthy, the son who betrayed his family. So I kept my head down, loaded up what I could fit into the trunk of my car, and tried not to look at the neighbors peeking through their curtains. I could feel their eyes like heat on the back of my neck. Whatever version of the story had already started to spread, I wasn't going to be the one to feed it. As I slammed the trunk closed, I looked up at the house one last time. The same porch where I used to sit with my mom eating peach cobbler in the summer. The same driveway where my dad taught me to change a tire. It wasn't just a house. It was every piece of my childhood compacted into drywall and concrete. And now it was just a crime scene, one where I had apparently played the villain. I didn't know where to go. My apartment lease didn't start for another 3 weeks. I couldn't afford a hotel. So I did the only thing I could. I sat in my car in the dark and called Celeste. The second she picked up and heard my voice, she didn't ask what happened. She just said, "Come here. Now." When I got to her place in Buckhead, I expected questions. I expected judgment. But Celeste opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. The kind that didn't feel like pity. It felt like an anchor. "You don't have to explain," she said. "You're safe now." It wasn't until the next morning that the next blow landed. Over breakfast, Celeste's phone buzzed. A message from a colleague, someone who followed the Peachtree Smokehouse social media page. The restaurant had posted a vague but pointed message. In times of betrayal, we protect what we've built. Family is more than blood. It's loyalty. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Brielle had moved fast. She wasn't just kicking me out of the house, she was kicking me out of the community. The post didn't name me, but it didn't have to. People would assume. People always do. Within hours, I started getting texts. From former co-workers at the restaurant, old high school friends, even a few neighbors. All variations of the same thing. Are you okay? Which really meant, did you do it? I tried to laugh it off, but I was spiraling. Brielle had weaponized perception. And worse, she'd done it so smoothly, so surgically, that I couldn't even prove it was targeted. Just enough ambiguity to create doubt. Just enough venom to kill my name. I told Celeste everything. She listened quietly, fingers steepled beneath her chin. Then she sighed and said, "Your father called me last night." My stomach dropped. "He didn't ask questions," she said. "Didn't want to hear your side. Just accused you of dragging me into your lies. Told me to back off before I made things worse." I felt the blood drain from my face. He thinks you're in on it. He doesn't think. He reacts. And right now someone's convinced him I'm the enemy. "They're trying to isolate me," I said. "From you. From anyone who might help." Celeste nodded. "It's what abusers do, Dash. Not just with fists, but with stories." That was when I decided to dig. I went back through everything, emails, drafts, attachments. I pulled metadata, server logs, timestamps. At first I didn't find much. Then I noticed something. One of the damning emails had a timestamp that didn't line up. It was supposedly sent at 11:04 p.m. on a Tuesday, but my Gmail activity showed no login at that time. The file attached to the message was created 3 days after the email date. The font used wasn't my default. The phrasing was off. It was like someone trying to sound like me and almost pulling it off. I could prove it. Not definitively, not yet, but I had enough to raise doubt. But that brought a bigger question. If I expose this now, what would it cost me? My MBA started in 2 weeks. I had moved mountains to get here. Did I really want to throw myself back into a war I couldn't win just to maybe possibly clear my name? Celeste saw the tension on my face. She leaned forward, steady and calm. "You want justice," she said. "But first you need power. Get the degree. Get the job. Then you can burn the whole damn castle down when it can't hurt you anymore." She was right. So I made a promise to myself. I backed up every file. I recorded every conversation. I documented everything. I wasn't walking away. I was building my case. Because one day they might come back not to apologize, but to ask for something. And I needed to be ready to decide who I was going to be when they did. 3 years is a long time. Long enough to build a new life, if you know how to let go. I finished my MBA at Emory with honors. Got recruited straight into a strategy firm in Midtown. Started renting a loft downtown with big windows and a quiet view. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Everything in it, every book, every fork, every chair was something I chose. Not handed down, not negotiated. Mine. Celeste became the only real family I had. We had Sunday dinners at her place, laughed about hospital politics, and shared recipes from her world travels. She never asked about my parents, never mentioned Brielle. She didn't have to. She knew that silence was the one gift I needed most. At work, I started getting noticed. I specialized in crisis management, ironic, I guess, considering how my life had been one long series of collapses. But I was good at it. Calm under pressure, relentless with detail. The kind of person people called when everything was falling apart. I didn't realize how poetic that was until Brielle showed up at my door. It was a Saturday. I had just gotten back from the gym, still in sweats, when I opened the door and saw her. She looked nothing like the sister I remembered. No makeup, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her eyes were tired, her posture hunched. She was wearing the same coat I'd seen her model in a press photo years ago, only now it looked worn, like it had weathered more storms than she could count. "Hey," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. I need your help. No apology. No acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just a need. Just a door she assumed could still be opened. I didn't invite her in. She stood on the threshold, hands wrapped around herself like she was holding something in. The restaurant's in trouble, she said. Big trouble. Dad's talking about filing for bankruptcy. Mom's not sleeping. It's bad, Dash. Really bad. I crossed my arms. Why come to me? Her eyes flicked down. Because I know you're the only one who can fix it. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I told her I'd think about it. A week later, my parents found me. They showed up at my office building, standing in the lobby like ghosts from a bad dream. I saw them through the glass doors and immediately felt heat crawl up my spine. I took them to a coffee shop down the street, kept my tone calm corporate. They started with pleasantries, how proud they were, how good I looked. But it didn't take long to turn. We need you, my father said. The business, it's sinking. I said nothing. We made mistakes, my mother added. But we believe in you. We always did. I wanted to laugh. Then they got to the part that made me go cold. There are some discrepancies, Dad said. In the books. Some issues with payroll, with supplier contracts. We had to cut some corners. How bad is it, I asked. Bad enough, he said. There could be audits, penalties. Maybe worse. And you want me to, what, be the fall guy? My father flinched. No. We want you to help clean it up, make it right. I thought of all the ethics classes I'd taken, all the case studies where a company's poor decisions dragged good people down with them, and I saw the trap. They weren't asking for help, they were asking for cover. I told them I needed time, walked out without another word. That night I opened the folder I hadn't touched in 3 years. The one with the fake emails, the fabricated attachments, the analysis of every digital lie Brielle had written. And a new question formed in my mind. If she had been able to fake internal documents so convincingly before, had she already known even then what kind of mess they were hiding? Was this all one long setup? Were they now coming to me not because they trusted me, but because they knew I was the only one who might survive the fallout? And if I didn't help, what else were they willing to do? Because in my family, the truth was never enough. It was always about who controlled the story. They didn't wait long after that cafe meeting to ramp things up. Not even 2 days passed before the texts and calls started flooding in, first from my mom, layered with concern and guilt-tripping, then from Brielle, whose tone twisted between desperation and veiled threats. Dad didn't bother with pretense. He just called, left 2 voicemails, and then texted, "You know what you have to do. This family depends on you." I stopped picking up. I needed clarity, not chaos. But clarity never comes when your phone won't stop vibrating with people trying to drag you back into a fire they lit themselves. Brielle sent a message that sat on my screen for an hour before I dared open it. Mom isn't eating. Dad hasn't slept in days. Do you want to be the reason we lose everything? Then a follow-up, cold and cryptic. If you don't help, are you okay with how this ends? The shift was all too familiar. When they needed something, I was family. When I questioned them, I was the problem. They wanted my help, but on their terms that erased what they'd done to me. A few nights later, Dad called again, and this time I answered. Maybe I needed to hear it for myself. He didn't waste time. "We need you to talk to the bank," he said. "I'm not a financial officer," I replied. "You don't have to be. You've got the degree, the credentials. You know how to position things. You want me to vouch for the business." There was a long silence, and then he said it. "We need you to stand behind the numbers. Help smooth things over. Your name will go a long way. My name. My signature. My future." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about help. This was about liability. They didn't want advice. They wanted a scapegoat in a tailored suit. I went back into my files, the dusty corner of my hard drive I hadn't touched since the night they threw me out. The fake emails, the digital fingerprints Brielle left behind. At the time, I saved it all out of hurt. Now it felt like armor. When I reread those forged emails, something new stood out. They weren't sloppy. They were deliberate. Too perfect. They matched the language of someone trying to prove something, not someone speaking naturally. It wasn't just about discrediting me. It was about rehearsing a story, one they could reuse. That night, I got a ping from someone I hadn't heard from in years, a former waiter from the restaurant. "Hey man, weird question. Did you hear anything about the health inspection last week?" Looked intense. He didn't say more, but it was enough. I started digging. Sure enough, the Peachtree Smokehouse had been flagged for a surprise inspection. There were whispers of violations, sanitation issues, questionable sourcing, irregularities in storage logs. It wasn't public yet, but the foundation was shaking, and they knew it. So when they begged me to help, what they meant was stand in the blast radius for us. I arranged one final meeting, neutral ground, a diner near Piedmont Park. Public bright and too loud for theatrics. Brielle arrived first, followed by our parents. Mom wore that strained smile she always used on customers who complained about the food, but still left a tip. "I've made a decision," I said after they ordered, but before the food arrived. "I'm not coming back. I won't stand behind a business I didn't break. I won't risk everything I've built to save something you refuse to protect." "You're abandoning us," Mom said. "You abandoned me first," I said. "When I asked for a co-signed loan. When you believed fake emails without a conversation. When you posted vague threats online to paint me as a traitor." Dad slammed his palm against the table, not hard but loud enough to draw a few eyes. "After all we've done for you, done for me," I cut him off. "You paid for Brielle's school, her PR campaigns, her failed expansions. You gave me a bedroom and kicked me out of it with no warning. Let's not rewrite history." I stood. "I wish you the best. But this is the end of the road for me." As I walked out, Brielle called after me. "You think this is over? You don't even know the half of it." I paused at the exit, turned back. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, and then she said it. "There was a foodborne illness complaint last month, a real one, hospital involved." I felt my throat tighten. "Did you report it?" Silence. That silence said everything. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my apartment lights, off email, inbox open, rereading old messages, opening new documents, sorting through years of digital noise for a signal that could tell me what to do. In the morning, I made a list. Every message, voicemail, suspicious login quote from Brielle, every line that could become a noose or a shield. I downloaded backups, changed all my passwords again, and for the first time in years, I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted to sue them. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. Protection. I explained everything to the firm's compliance team. They walked me through what I needed to do, what to say, what not to say. Then I pulled out the old forged email from 3 years ago, the one that got me kicked out of the house. I opened the metadata. File created on a Friday. Email timestamp said it was sent on Wednesday. Someone forgot to backdate the attachment. There were typos I never made. Phrases like strategic pivot plan that screamed Brielle's voice. She'd always been in love with buzzwords. There it was, my proof. Not just that I'd been framed, but that she was capable of framing me again if it served her. And that wasn't even the worst part. I remembered what she said about someone getting sick. I found the health department's complaint log. A child age 6. Salmonella. Traced back to a catered event tied to the smokehouse. The investigation was still open, but it was no longer a whisper. It was a siren. That was the tipping point. I knew if I stayed quiet, someone else might get hurt. And if they did, and I had known, I wouldn't just be a bystander, I'd be complicit. So I filed a report. Not on a blog, not on social media. I used the legal channels. Through my lawyer, I submitted everything I knew, what I'd heard, what I suspected, what I could prove. I didn't accuse anyone directly. I simply provided data. The fallout was fast. Health inspectors showed up within the week. The restaurant shut down pending investigation. News spread, first local blogs, then a food safety column. By the time Brielle called me screaming into the phone, it was already too late. "You've ruined everything," she shouted. "No," I said quietly. You did that. I just stopped covering for you. Dad emailed me. He skipped the insults this time. Just one line. You've killed our legacy. I didn't respond. I met with HR at my firm, explained everything. They were understanding, even impressed by the thoroughness of my preparation. They offered support, legal resources, and most importantly, protection. Weeks passed. The Peachtree Smokehouse never reopened. The health department found multiple violations. Unreported supplier switches, expired goods. A bookkeeping system that was frankly a mess. There was no dramatic arrest, no tabloid-worthy trial. Just silence. Closure. I still get messages sometimes from old acquaintances, from former employees. Some thank me. Some don't know what to think. And that's fine. I didn't do it for them. I did it because I refused to carry a lie for anyone anymore. I spend Sundays at my aunt's house now. Dinners with just the two of us, or with her friends, or with someone I've started seeing. My name is no longer a shield for other people's messes. It's mine. And I finally like the sound of it. What I've learned is this family doesn't end when the blood runs cold. It ends when you let it. And sometimes it begins again, somewhere unexpected, somewhere real. They may have called me a traitor, but I never betrayed myself. And that's what matters now.